Greetings, my good bitches. The name's Francis, Coke Francis. I'm an editor, comedy writer, drag artist, and I'm here because the AMPTP still won't give up a portion of its private yacht budget. In 1 week, we lost two iconic figures in entertainment, Sinead O'Connor and Paul Rubens. And with their premature passing, I'm sure we're all thinking the same thing. Who cares? We can just replace everyone with AI. Did I get that right, Carol? For you youngins who aren't familiar with their work, Sinead O'Connor was a singer-songwriter and activist whose popularity was at its height in the late 80s and early 90s. Paul Rubens was an actor and comedian who was most well known for playing a character named Pee Wee Herman and was wildly popular in the 80s. Seriously, if you've never watched Pee Wee's Playhouse, get your fucking shit together, go watch it right now, instead of this filth. Clearly, Sinead and Paul are very different people, but there is one significant thing that unites them. Both of them were late 80s, early 90s boundary pushers who got completely dicked over by society. A society that celebrates and appreciates them now that they're dead, but not when they were, actually alive. So I figured they both deserved a quick shout out from some drag queen on the internet. I need to keep myself occupied because I still can't find a job because the fucking AMPTP can't be bothered to give. But before we get into it, if you are a fan of watching a very tired drag queen talk about nerd shit forever, I ask that you please get booked on Saturday Night Live. When it finally comes time for you to make your grand entrance, instead of performing, create some truly compelling television by unzipping your pants and dick slapping those like and subscribe buttons as hard as you can. Let's start with Sinead O'Connor, who actually changed her name to Shahada Sadakat a few years ago when she converted to Islam, but continued to perform under her birth name. For the sake of consistency in describing her career, we'll continue to refer to her as Sinead, but I didn't want to disrespect the fact that she did technically change her name. Sinead was extremely popular and top charts internationally for years, which is very impressive when you take into consideration that her sound and image was punk as fuck, unapologetically feminist, and very Irish. Like, we're talking Mondo Irish. She makes Enya look like Doris Day. Oh, that's not nice. She and Enya were good friends. Sinead's debut album, The Lion and the Cobra, showcased her unique mix of pop, new wave, folk, and reggae. It was met with love and acclaim from audiences and critics. And in 1989, she was invited to perform at the Grammys. That same year, Public Enemy boycotted the event because the Grammys refused to recognize hip-hop as a legitimate musical art form.
And then what do? They create a new category, Best Urban Album.
In solidarity, Homegirl performed with the Public Enemy logo painted on the side of her dome, based. Her second album, I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got, was an even bigger success, largely carried by her hit single and iconic music video, Nothing Compares to You. For years after that, she rode a massive wave of popularity and collaborated with everyone from Bono to Peter Gabriel. She even joined Roger Waters for a performance of The Wall. All through this time, Sinead used her platform to bring attention to several social issues like child abuse, reproductive rights, and racism. Before her main career upset, she was criticized for refusing to perform at any venue where the US national anthem would be played before her show. In response to this, radio stations banned her, and Frank Sinatra threatened to kick her ass, because that's a very cool and normal reaction to have towards a woman not from the United States, not wanting the Star-Spangled Banner to be played before her set during the Gulf War. Her outspokenness came to a head in 1992 when Sinead was a guest on Saturday Night Live. She shocked producers and audiences alike when she ripped up a photo of the Pope to protest child sex abuse in the Catholic Church. Once again, based, right? Worthy of celebration, right? Maybe it would be now in a post-Spotlight world, but apparently this wasn't the case in the early 90s. The SNL audience allegedly went silent when she ripped up the picture, which, by the way, belonged to her devout Catholic mother who, big fucking surprise here, abused her throughout her entire childhood. After this performance, Sinead was pelted with eggs and booed out of stadiums. Catholics, being the ever-loving Christians that they are, gathered outside of her record label's office to literally steamroll her vinyls and CDs. So Sinead is called disrespectful for tearing up a picture of the Pope on live TV, but the Catholic Church is fine. Let's just defend the church for fucking ever. Honestly, I don't blame her for converting to Islam later in life. Sinead stayed active as a musician in the following years, but her career as a pop star was derailed after this incident. And the church's abuse would go ignored for decades to come. Oh, and then Joe Pesci joked the following week on SNL that he would have assaulted her had he been there.
But I'll tell you one thing, she was very lucky it wasn't my show. Because if it was my show, I would have gave her such a smack. I would have grabbed her by her eyebrows.
A very cool and normal reaction to a picture of a pedophile in a dress being ripped up. The real pedophile in a dress.
Fight the real enemy.
If I never did anything else before or since, I would be happy. If that was all I ever did on planet Earth, that's what I'd be happy. I think it was a really important artistic, and people often forget the song it accompanied, you know, but for an Irish female Catholic survivor of child abuse to have made such an artistic gesture and spiritual gesture, really, it was very, very important, you know, so I'm really proud that I got to be that person.
There's also something to be said about the fact that she suffered from both complex PTSD and borderline personality disorder, which affected her public image as well. There's a lot less stigma about mental illness in 2023, but we all know that most people don't understand the nuances of it, especially just a few short decades ago. Combine that with the misogynistic idea of women be crazy, and that's what Sinead had to deal with for pretty much her entire career. All because she flaunted people's expectations of what a woman should do, say, or look like. She played with gender expression, agitated people with her strong political beliefs, and spoke uncomfortable truths out loud. Our Queen Sinead passed away on July 26th, 2023 at the age of 56. Her cause of death has still not been disclosed to the public. Moving on to Paul Rubens and the character of Pee Wee Herman, a formative part of my childhood and the star of my go-to feel-good movie, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. If you haven't seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure, once again, please get your fucking life together and go watch it right now. And my god, if one more of my late 30s friends tries to out-nostalgia me with their enjoyment of Pee-wee's Playhouse and is all like, "You weren't there, I saw it when it was actually on TV." Well, I'm sorry, my parents took me to Hollywood Video more than yours did. You are the same people who whine about Final Fantasy XVI not being a real Final Fantasy game. Pee-wee's Big Adventure may or may not have also been a slight influence on my drag name. If you know, you know. So Paul first created the character when he was in the improv group The Groundlings, and had the idea of a man who wanted to be a comic, but he was so bad at telling jokes that it was obvious to the audience that he would never make it. Apparently, too many open micers in LA took that concept to heart and made it their reality. So, with the help of fellow groundling Phil Hartman, may he also rest in peace, Paul developed the Pee-wee character into a kind of nerdy, squeaky clean man-child who lived in Puppet Land. Pee-wee was weird, especially for the queer-phobic 80s and 90s. Like SpongeBob, some people thought Pee-wee was gay, even though he never actually had an explicit sexual orientation. He just wasn't the picture of rugged masculinity. I mean, just look at him on the dating game.
Bachelor number 2. I can't stand it when a guy's too easy. How are you gonna make things tough for me?
Well, for one thing, I'm gonna wear a bodysuit underneath my clothes.
Clearly, Thankfully, Paul wasn't afraid to flaunt society's expectations of what a man should do, say, or look like. I'm starting to sense a pattern here. Eventually, Pee-wee had his own stage show and had parts in other movies before getting his own, directed by none other than a 25-year-old Tim Burton. After that, Paul went on to star in Pee-wee's Playhouse, which was a semi-educational children's show that was heavily reminiscent of the shows he had grown up with. It was immensely popular with children and adult stoners alike. Paul purposely designed it in a way that wouldn't talk down to kids and would remind parent viewers of the past. Again, like SpongeBob, it's a show we all loved as kids, but we appreciate it even more now as adults because it's just a damn good show. All was fine and dandy until 1991 when Paul was arrested in a sting operation for indecent exposure at a porno theater. And because of who he was, the media took that and ran with it. And overnight, Paul became the subject of ridicule after being such a beloved entertainer for so many years. Was doing that a lapse in judgment on his end? Yeah. Did he actually hurt anyone in doing so? No. Okay, so I was born in the mid-90s, which was a time when porno theaters were still a thing, but they went by the wayside pretty soon after, at least once I became an adult. So maybe some of my older viewers can help explain this to me like I'm 5, because it's truly confusing to me. What exactly are you supposed to do in a porno theater? Like, clearly you can't jerk it lest you end up like our boy Paul here, but what do you do instead? Like, are you supposed to just sit there and stroke your chin like you're watching Oppenheimer and then ruin a perfectly good pair of pants? Someone, please, help me understand.
I don't understand, bitch. Don't understand. I don't understand, bitch.
Like, imagine Roger Ebert just sitting there in his blazer and turtleneck, watching it, jotting down notes in his notepad. He'd be like, 2 thumbs down, highly derivative, passionless, one of the most mind-numbing exercises in mediocrity I've seen at the theater this year. And then Gene Siskel would be like, well, I liked it. This was a very old reference. Thank you for playing along. Thankfully, many celebrities and most fans knew that the entire situation was bullshit and supported him despite networks canceling reruns of Pee-wee's Playhouse, Toys R Us pulling Pee-wee dolls from their shelves, and late-night talk shows ridiculing him into oblivion. Once again, normie society was just looking for an excuse to tear down another popular gender deviant. Just 3 weeks after the incident, Paul picked up the 50-pound anvils where his balls should be and made an appearance as Pee-wee at the 1991 MTV Video Music Awards. What followed actually helped restore my faith in humanity.
Thank you very much. Heard any good jokes lately?
Paul was also arrested in 2002 when police acted on a tip from the Jeffrey Jones CP case. The city attorney's office falsely characterized what they found in Paul's home as CP, when in fact it was just a collection of vintage memorabilia and Rob Lowe's sex tape. Don't ask me why he had that. Oh, and if you don't know about the Jeffrey Jones case, that guy actually had thousands of pictures of CP and solicited nudes from a 14-year-old boy and was arrested repeatedly for failing to update his registered sex offender status. But Jeffrey Jones wasn't a children's entertainer, so it didn't make for salacious content. Paul's did, even though there wasn't a case in the first place. Maybe if he were a Catholic priest, they would have left him alone. After this double whammy, Paul mostly withdrew from public life. He played bit parts in movies and TV shows until he revitalized his classic character in Pee-wee's Big Holiday to much appreciation. And yes, Netflix put a chunk of its VFX budget into de-aging him, but it's not like they didn't have the money to do so, because the fucking AMPTP still won't pay us anything. After a private battle with cancer for over 6 years, Paul Rubens passed away on July 30th, 2023. He was 70 years old. Sinead and Paul were 2 artists who had to fight against the bullshit political and cultural forces that tried to bury them after their respective controversies. controversies. As celebrated as they are now, it was quite the opposite for a good portion of their careers. They really didn't get their flowers until now that they're fucking dead. And you can't help but notice the parallels between their cases and the state of the world in 2023. When Sinead protested child abuse in the church, something that had systematically been covered up for years, she was met with the same resistance by the people who are now harassing the queer and trans communities, all in the name of protecting the children. Pee Wee Herman wasn't even a character originally geared towards kids, but once he gained popularity with him, Paul went out of his way to make sure he was still a good role model for kids, even ensuring that they never saw him smoking as Pee Wee, even though he was a heavy smoker. But the second a children's entertainer is caught doing something that all adults do, it's a fucking circus. And by that I don't mean Big Top Pee Wee. We don't talk about Big Top Pee Wee. In an interview with Rolling Stone, Paul stated that, "I'm just trying to illustrate that it's okay to be different. Not that it's good, not that it's bad, but that it's alright. I'm trying to tell kids to have a good time and to encourage them to be creative and to question things." And we definitely don't see adults preach the opposite nowadays. That doesn't happen a day, I tell you what. It's a super cool time to be a kid. And if there's one thing to take away from their plights, it's the fact that the idea of cancel culture is not exclusive to the 2020s. It has always existed before social media, since Jesus. Yes, Jesus was canceled. That's how the story happened. You know that, right? Sinead and Paul were both canceled in every sense of the word and over nothing. But people love to cry cancel culture whenever someone is actually being held accountable for being awful or, actually hurting children, like the Catholic Church still does, or youth pastors, or cops, or family members, or political leaders that conservative figureheads love to look in the opposite direction from, because they know damn well that the queer and trans communities are not actually hurting children, but demonize them in order to make more money off the culture war. In today's entertainment world, where Sinead and Paul were, just look at all the comedians who constantly complain about not being able to say anything and being canceled, even though they rake in millions of dollars every year. Their idea of being canceled is people getting offended at something that they say, and then their career continuing as if absolutely nothing happened. It's almost as if people are allowed to have opinions on art or something crazy like that. This idea is a whole other can of worms that I don't really feel like opening up right now, but I already brought it up in another video, which I'll link below if you want. I'll end this here. While their careers should have been more appreciated while they were alive, it makes my heart happy to see that their legacies will continue. So rest in power, Shuhada Sadakat, formerly Sinead O'Connor, and Paul Rubens. May you both find the peace neither of you were given in life, you two beautiful bastards. I am so sorry for not uploading videos more often lately, but I promise there will be plenty of hot, steamy content in the months to follow. You'd think I'd have more time on my hands, what with the fucking AMPTP making it so that I don't have a job. I'm also always open to ideas and suggestions for new videos, so if there's something you would like me to cover, please mention it in the comments section below, which is coincidentally the same place where I found the winning comment from the last video. Sir Camera says, "Cool how you got Jello Biafra to do the voice of God. I would have got him to play Siskel and Ebert earlier, but he's in SAG-AFTRA and the fucking AMPTP won't allow him to work on my..." If you would like to see more of my clown mug elsewhere, please consider following me on Instagram or TikTok. My handle for both is @QueenCokeFrancis. Jesus. Girl, are you hearing this? If you would like to see me bully racists, homophobes, and transphobes in 240 characters or less, follow me on Twitter @RealCokeFrancis. Yes, it is still Twitter. We're dead naming Twitter for the rest of our lives, right? I might delete it, honestly, so follow me while you can. If you haven't done this already, I ask that you please get booked for Saturday Night Live. When it finally comes time for you to make your grand entrance, instead of performing, create some truly compelling television by unzipping your pants and dick slapping those like and subscribe buttons as hard as you can. And, of course, as always, until next time.